Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you are listening to this podcast. This is the Teachers Workroom podcast, and we are here to discuss real-world issues such as politics, pop culture, race, religion, and social awareness, guaranteed to come from diverse perspectives. And as usual, kicking us off with a check-in is Dr. Bethel. What's going on, Doctor?
Hi, thank you, JG. So this week's whip around question is going to be, what is one thing you are proud of from this previous week, and do tell why? Okay, so we're going to start this week with Selah. All right, Selah, take us away.
Yes. Hello, everyone. For me, this week, honestly, was an emotional roller coaster. And I'm proud of myself for allowing myself to bounce back, you know? And Aquarius in nature,
Whoop, whoop.
we don't do well with emotions. We don't know how to interact with it. We don't know how to deal with it. So just giving myself space to do that, I'm really proud of myself for that.
Yeah. Shout out to you.
Yeah. And then I just realized, not that but that JG and Princess are both Aquarius, and I love you all. Usually my relationship with Aquariuses are like strained. But,
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Let's just tell the audience that we make up the air signs, all of us as a collective
Oh, yeah.
in the zodiac.
We do.
Libra, Gemini, Aquarius.
We are, yeah. Gemini and Aquarius. And now we're going to introduce Miss Williams. Go ahead, Leisha.
Greetings, everybody. So this week, what I'm proud of is being able to cocoon in my purposeful silence. Last week, my self-care tip was to kind of step away from media and the news. And I'm receiving or seeing the benefits of that. So being silent and being introspective always gives us more clarity about, the direction we're heading in, what we want to do, how we contribute to, a variety of things in our life. So yeah, that's what I'm proud of this week.
Yeah. I know for me, I'm next, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Hey everybody, it's your boy JG under one. Okay, just kidding. The thing that I'm proud of this week is showing up for one of my students who Did everyone hear me? I'm sorry. Did I cut out or anything like that? Just a little?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry. So what I was saying is that one of the things that I'm proud of this week is showing up for my student who is transgendered, right? And realizing that my presence there was creating like a safe environment for that person without even like saying anything, right? But the moment that I walked into the room, yes, I was in the building this week. The moment that I walked into the room, I can literally see the student breathe a sigh of relief or a breath of relief that, oh, someone else at this school is part of this community that I'm part of. I'm going to be all right. And I can literally see the anxiety being put to rest by just me showing up in that space at that time with that student. So that's one thing that I was reflecting on this weekend, that, sometimes we're just not aware of the power and the influence and the impact that we can create in our students' lives just by showing up authentically as who we are,
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so powerful, JG. And then for me, one thing I'm proud of, I had a couple meetings or interviews, and I just reflected on my experiences in education, and then also how sometimes we got to just stand in our power, right? And I just reflected on like my career and like where I want to go, and it helped like codify and put things in perspective and give me a clearer vision of what I want to do in the future.
Yeah. And that's, you know me, I'm one of my mantras, clear mind, balanced head, right? Before we make those decisions, and before we, turn that page or set out on a new journey, clear mind, balanced head. So let's transition into the hot topics of this week, with Miss Leisha. Last week we know was fully loaded, baby. This week, I don't know. Are we still in 2020 part 2? Is it fully loaded?
Let's get into it. All right. So we always want to start off with some positivity. So YouTube has announced their Black Class of 2021. Excellent. Super hyped, super excited. As you guys know, I'm not a huge TV watcher, but I'm a huge YouTube watcher, right? So some of the people that I actually watch have been inaugurated in the class of 2021. So I'm super excited for them. Yeah, YouTube has announced the first round of YouTube Black Voices Class of 2021 winners. The initiative focuses on investments and narratives that emphasize the intellectual power, authenticity, dignity, and joy of Black voices on the social media platform. A little bit more about it. So YouTube has chosen 132 creators from the US, UK, Kenya, Brazil, Australia, South Africa, and Nigeria. The members include beauty gurus, musicians, activists, personal trainers, comedians, teachers, poets, and photographers. The platform tapped applicants from those who participated in YouTube Black events in the past, and the applicants were then evaluated based on channel performance and engagement metrics. That's the biggest way that they get recognized. So that is coming from Forbes.com. And what this means is that YouTube will offer funding for channel development, support, workshops, and trainings, and the networking programs for creators. We are stepping into the creative space, so we know this is exciting. I know this is a huge milestone for Black creatives and influencers. As we know, and we discuss often, entrepreneurship amongst Gen X or Gen Z is booming, and more creatives in this generation are retiring from their 9-to-5s and creating a bag for themselves. As educators, this is the type of environment we aspire our scholars to be a part of. So congrats on this accolade.
Yeah, I there are a couple of folks that I watch, because y'all know I love me some YouTube, right?
Shout them out, please, because I have my list of folks I want to shout out. All right, I want to shout out Juicy, The Grapevine, Kelly Sam, Shad Crown, Amber Closet, Ari Fix, Aisha Marie, Tariq Ali, King of Reeds for Harriet, Asia Jackson.
Damn. Oh my goodness.
I love y'all.
Okay.
Congrats. Yes, listen.
Girl.
We know someone's passed.
Well, I ain't got that many. But one of I definitely love King of Reeds. I love the Armand Wiggins show. Who else do I love on YouTube Black Voices right now? That's all that I can think of. King of Reeds and the Armand Wiggins show. Yeah, I don't.
Oh wow.
Courtney and Princess. I'm sorry, Scylla. Do you guys watch YouTube shows?
I'm so ashamed that this is new to me. This
girl.
Oh wow.
No.
Okay, let's X that out. X that out.
Well, child. Listen, let Princess speak for herself. I actually do watch a lot of YouTube channels, but I watch the comedies, like the couples and things, and documentaries.
Right. Yeah, I love me some documentaries.
Yeah, so I'm a YouTuber.
Yeah, I actually want to take this opportunity too, since we're talking about YouTube Black, to shout out the Chasing Reality. I guess network or YouTube network. They do a lot of LGBTQ reality shows and other content for the LGBTQ community, and the content is actually really, really, really good. I'm shocked that they have not gotten on TV just yet, but shout out to the Chasing Reality franchise that is doing a lot of great work on YouTube, bringing visibility to the LGBTQ community in reality and other kinds of TV genres. So shout out to them. What else is going on?
Yeah, and hopefully they are recognized soon. Alrighty, so moving on, teachers may be leaving the profession due to new challenges brought by COVID-19. So we've been seeing this trending. I mean, if you're an educator, right, and this is like your niche, you've been seeing this trending in the news for quite a while at this point, over a year, I would say. So growing evidence indicates an increase in teachers' decision to retire early as a result of COVID-19 related challenges, such as unsafe working environments, lack of support, stresses associated with remote instruction, burnout, and other professional and personal factors. Also, some teachers have, who were much older and more vulnerable to COVID-19 are likely to be the first to instate their early retirement.
Wow.
It's like contrast news because, with COVID, there is an increasing number of teachers needed, but budget cuts caused by the economic recession will make it harder to meet that need. And this information is coming from a more scholarly source, the Economic Policy Institute. So yeah, what are our thoughts there?
I'm kind of wondering, I don't know, this has been on my mind with the whole vaccine, like whether or not it becomes mandatory for teachers, and then what would that mean for us as a community?
And so you think that that's also a consideration in the...
Yeah, absolutely. On whether or not this number continues to decline.
Right. I think that this is expected, to be quite honest with you, because the pandemic and all the disadvantages that it came with and losses compounded further the challenges that educators face, right? Individually, but also as a collective. And so I think that part of it is the burnout and the, can we really survive through 2021 in the way that we're going right now, right? When there seems like no real shifts or changes or investment in a shift or change is going to take place. I think that's part of it. But I also think that another part of it is like that there, as by virtue of the pandemic, that there's some educators that are just in a place where they want to explore something different, right? That the pandemic, I think that one thing that the pandemic has done is opened up our minds and our eyes and our ears to other ways of making money, other ways of doing things, determining what really matters, really looking at our purpose in life. And so maybe for a number of these teachers that their purpose has shifted or has evolved to something different, where they don't see their purpose being in the classroom any longer. And, that's just a reality of for a lot of people, that their purpose is no longer in the classroom.
Yeah, I sorry to add one more thing, but I think this year gave people the opportunity to figure out purpose in a way that they haven't in the past. And I just want to add one thing about media, because we all know that teachers are undervalued, but I think even more this year, the rhetoric was egregious.
Right.
I've even heard some politicians say, well, these teachers are lazy. Get back in the building.
Stop sitting at home.
Yes.
And making money. They're sitting at home, but they want more money. Yeah, I heard that too.
Exactly. So,
Dr. Bethel, I think that you were going to say something about it.
Yeah. Listening to you all speak, I just think it's devastating. For me, I have just reflected in, it has made me want to really remain in the profession, if you will, because I saw the stark difference in like access and resources, especially for, you know, low income minority students. But then also it taught me that I can, you know, do both. I can teach, I can work in education, and in my spare time I can fulfill my, you know, personal passions of like writing, you know, research, in different avenues, like you all stated.
All right, Leisha, what else is going on?
Alrighty, so third thing on the list, Donald Trump was impeached twice this week for inciting a violent insurrection against the U.S. government. The votes, again, very close, which again just further like paints the picture of the reality of the America that we live in, right? So there were 232 votes for yes, he should be impeached, and there were 197 for no, with 10 Republicans joining the Democrats to impeach. So this is the most ever from which a president's own party has agreed to his impeachment. So, I mean, I guess it's a win, I guess, if you are brought into this, you know, party system. Just over a year ago, Republicans voted unanimously against impeaching Donald Trump. So that's a huge difference from 10 Republicans, again, from his own party, agreeing to impeach him. And this is coming from the New York Times.
I just think I think that it is insulting. I think it is insulting to the average person, right? Not the average person with common sense. And I hate to put it in such layman terms, but to me, like, this is like one of those situations where the solution or the answer or the steps that need to be taken are very apparent, right?
Yeah,
they're
sure.
very obvious here. And it's just further confirms how it just further confirms how, like, the dissonance that exists. It's like, are we living in the same, are we all living in the same place, seeing the same things, understanding them for what they are, and to some degree align on and agree on what needs to happen moving forward. And to me, the crazy thing about it is, from one side of your mouth saying that yes, he was wrong, yes, he contributed to this, but on the other side saying we shouldn't consequence him. It's like, for real though?
Yeah. I mean, we would think so because from the outside looking into the GOP, it's like, y'all, that makes sense. But for them, being in power, right, if you will, if you want to continue to control power, it's like, yeah, he was wrong, but you know, he's still a white rich male in America.
Yeah, I think this situation reminds me a lot of something we always talk about, and that's being reactive versus being proactive. And I think this all boils down to a reactive situation. We've seen this for the last 4 years. Like, we waited multiple times until like major things happen, and like, okay, impeachment. Okay, now multiple people are dead. Okay, impeachment. But I think just to speak on the numbers, what you were saying, Jamal, the individuals who are opposing, it's because of the benefits that come post presidency. And Republicans don't want to lose those traveling privileges, those speaker privileges, because they need to gear up for the next election. And so that's where the dissidence, if you will, that's where that's coming from.
In addition, NYC cut ties with Donald Trump. Mayor de Blasio incited, which simply means that the city will terminate its contracts with Donald Trump and his company. We've already seen his name vanish from several places. For example, the skating rink in Central Park, a condo on the Upper West Side, and a hotel.
And so that's the crazy thing, right? Is that the majority, well, I don't want to say the majority, but there are clearly people and entities who are breaking ties with Donald Trump as a result of one, the last 4 years, but in particular the thing that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Which was his encouragement and inciting of the insurrection on the Capitol. So it's like, if these people, companies are standing on the right side of this issue, you who are the politician voted in by the people, put there to help manage the affairs on behalf of the people, who is supposed to really carry the moral code, the ethics of governance in your hand, or by virtue of taking that oath, and you can't do the same thing that these other people and companies are doing. It's crazy. But as someone said, it's a matter of it's a fight to hold on to the power and it's like almost like a desperation, a desperate grasp at the straws of power and privilege, right? It's almost, we brought this up last episode, this idea of fear, right? And acting or reacting on the fear, but the fear that they have is the fear of quote unquote losing
power,
losing the power and the privilege, right, that comes with their identity. So it's like, if it is that I don't have the power and privilege that comes along with being who I am physically, then who am I? Right? What
which we'll talk about
can
in
I
the heart
do?
of the
Like,
episode.
what quote unquote influence do I have? I think and this is a perfect segue into the heart of our episode today, which brings into conversation this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what it does, if it does anything, period.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we spoke a lot about different avenues, right? So JG spoke about like the LGBTQ community gaining traction in like different spaces and making aware. So in our workspaces, we hear a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in my previous experience, I have seen that managers, bosses, and even staff have different variations, experiences, and understandings of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, right?
Right.
So, according to UC Berkeley, diversity has been defined to include, initially just religion and race. So now, in 2021, it has been expanded and broadened to race, sex, socioeconomic status, background, and even, learning, abilities and disabilities, what have you, right?
All the identity markers.
Every identity marker, known to human at this point, it is included in that. And then when we speak about equity, meaning the fairness of a company's policy, the rules they apply to every citizen or every staff in that community or organization. And then lastly, inclusion, right? The access of each member within that community, organization, or society to all of the resources, right? So with our experiences as Black teachers and diversity, equity and inclusion, we have had, for me, there have been times where it has been traumatizing, right? It has been triggering, which further led me to then, step into a role to lead DEI for my staff, right? When I was on leadership team. So, just for this time, I want you all to recount your experiences with DEI personally. And then, speak about your experiences, speak about your expectations initially and how they probably have changed over time, what you expected from your managers, and how to support you, with DEI issues, if you will.
Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I don't mind. I'll jump in because I think Dr. Vidal, you said it right. It's triggering. Triggering is the key word. I personally, I have not had a good DEI, sorry, change of terms, experience. I think for me, one of the major things has been teaching white people how to treat us.
Right.
And it's become an hour or more conversation about, here's the aggressions that you've done to me this year. Here's how I would prefer to be treated, opposed to I am a human being. And we all, I think I know all of you well enough to say we all will sit here and say it is not our responsibility to tell white people when they are racist. It is their responsibility to know. And especially if you're teaching Black kids, how do you not know? How do you allow yourself to sit in a setting where you are unaware of those biases? So I think I've always been the troublemaker in the sense of my silence. I don't want to participate, and that's been my experience. Yeah.
For me, I actually, and I think I might be the outlier here among the four of us, but I actually love DEI work. Whether it goes really well or really bad, right? I think that it is work that is necessary. It is necessary work, and I actually compared the work that DEI requires. I compare that to the work that Iyanla Vanzant does to some degree, right?
I love
that. Shout out!
Yeah.
And so, I've had the privilege of leading DEI in the past, but primarily at the institution that I'm at right now. That literally is in my roles and responsibilities. And how it has changed for me is, before, I would participate from the lens of, well, let me teach you, or let me tell you, or let me show you, or let me provide you with an example of how what you do affects me and people that identify in the way that I identify, with the hopes that you're going to, I guess, learn from it and not do it again. Now, my approach is very different, and I see my role and my responsibility as creating the environment and providing you with the tools and the resources to do your own work.
Yeah.
So I put the heavy lifting back on the people, because I always say that the work has to be done on both sides, right? And I'm not here to necessarily tell you what is the right thing versus the wrong thing to do, but I want to create an environment and provide you with the tools so that you can increase your own self-awareness. And you can, all I'm doing is holding up the mirror, baby, for you to look in that mirror, use the tools and the resources that I have provided to dig into and to grow your own self-awareness so that you can self-actualize on your own. And in the meantime, the support that I'm lending to you is I'm going to just provide you with the direct feedback around what you're saying, what you're doing, and what I believe are indicators of your mindset. And I'm going to push that mindset, and I'm going to push those habits by just asking you questions, by just creating different scenarios so that you can do the work on your own to self-actualize. So that's how it has shifted for me. I enjoy it. It becomes frustrating at some times, but I have to remind myself that we're all on different journeys and we're all in different places. And I can't walk into DEI situations expecting that everyone is going to walk out on the same level or at the same, on the same page. I got to let that go and realize that everyone is just at different places. And who wants to do the work is going to do the work. And who don't want to do the work, they're not going to do the work, and it's going to show. And I have to keep holding up the mirror to them so that they can
Yeah.
see it for themselves. I ain't telling you nothing no more. I ain't teaching nothing no more. I ain't doing all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I would say I also have had a shift. So going from working in a white space where a majority of educators who were respected were white, but the population of the school, meaning the kids who were being educated, were Black. And now being at a Black or predominantly Black space where most of the administration and educators are Black. There's maybe only, I think, 2 white teachers on our team in the whole school.
Oh, wow.
So there has been a major shift. And so I will say that I did have this mindset when I worked in the white space that D&I was not for me, or it is not my job for me to educate you all on what the plight of the being Black in America is, right? You chose this work, so what are you bringing to the table? What understanding are you bringing to the table that allows you to be part of our community, right? Or to be on this journey with us, to not be, however we see ourselves in America, right? They say they're undoing this, undoing that, but it's like, okay, show me. And that's kind of what my disposition was at D&I. Like, I understand what it means to be Black in America. This is for you to now kind of appease us as Black educators so that there is a level of trust. You guys know the way I showed up at the white space was very poker face. My boundaries were clear with white educators. We work together, and that's pretty much the extent of our relationship. Very clear, right? There was never I think a white educator at that place would never be like, oh, Amelia, are XYZ. It was just like, no, we work together. This is what she teaches, and I teach this, and blah, blah, blah. So I do want to recognize what JG is saying, in that everybody is on their own journey, right? Even though, so our diaspora is large, even though, I may identify physically with a lot of the students that I'm teaching, doesn't mean that I immediately empathize or understand the journey that they're on, right? A lot of our scholars come from living situations that I don't have the experience of coming from. So even that's something that I need to learn about, or need to educate or do the self-work to understand, hey, Leisha, this is a situation where it can't be no nonsense because this scholar didn't, eat dinner last night, or this scholar's thinking about where they're about to go to sleep tonight. And for me, it would just be like, doesn't matter. You're in class, you have a Black educator, there is no excuse. There's no excuse. You should be learning. I look like you. Representation matters. You give, whoever else those lame excuses. And we've already noted on the show before that, for me, I feel like a lot of the white educators in this work were kind of coming from a savior complex, whereas the scholars would have real life situations going on, and white educators would kind of fall to, or kind of just pivot in a negative way, which I think we see as pivot in a negative way. It's like bend the rules for them.
Yeah. Unintentional innate.
Right. Yeah. Right. Lower the bar.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas I guess stepping into that type of space where that has been the narrative for so long, we were teaching high schoolers. So for our high schoolers who have been in that system for 8 years or however many years prior to us getting there, they had, a lot of their experiences, they have never had a Black educator, right? So I think that's why I was so like, poker face, doesn't matter. I don't care what's going on. Use those excuses with them. Do not use them with me. You have no excuse at this point. And then I would just say, to shift into working in a Black space where majority of my school, from administration down, principal down, it's majority Black, and the staff kind of resembles the entire student body. D&I at this school, it's only required by the white people.
Oh, wow.
The Black people don't necessarily have to take part in it, but we are empowered to lead and become a part of the team, or the leadership. So again, I've declined the ask to say to like be a part of the DEIA leadership, because it's like, it's not my job. I'm not here to educate white people again with a similar mindset, right? Like, I can do my own self-work, but the white people who have chosen to be a part of this community, they've got to figure out why. Like, why have you chosen to be a part of the community? Do the work.
I think for me, I feel like I was kind of forced to lead DEI at my couple schools ago, because like you said, Leisha, we in that space we kind of take the back seat, right? And then think like, well, we don't really need to do this work. I'm Black, like that's obvious. Look at me, like I understand DEI, but for me, when I went to this school, most of I was on the leadership team, and there was another Black person, but majority was white. Most of the school staff was white, and there was a pocket of people of color who had been there for a while, and then there was like a new, influx. And this school has struggled with retaining its Black and brown teachers. So the Black and brown teachers who were on staff, the newer and the ones who were returning, would come to me in silos and on the side to talk about issues like, was this a microaggression? And I was like, you know what? I'm putting out a lot of fires on the side. So I need to like use my voice, and I need to use my position on the leadership team to shed light. So when I stepped to the forefront and started to, lead DEI with my co-worker who happens to be a white female, and the white female was leading DEI all by herself, right? Which was fine at the time. Yeah, y'all.
No, it ain't.
I mean, the thing is, let me tell you why. Yeah and no, but let me tell you why. Because no other person of color had stepped up to the plate.
Okay.
No other person of color had been required. So this person, the white coworker, she was very well aware of her privilege, of her power. She wasn't on leadership team, but she was aware of how her privilege and power played out in the school, in society, and what have you, right? So, like I said, I partnered with her to bring those issues to the forefront, and we were able to uncover a lot of trauma that the people of color on staff had endured for years, y'all. And with that being said, we would have to meet, my co-planner and I, we would have to meet with our principal, who happened to be white, right? And sometimes we would get into it, and he would try to control how the D&I sessions would go. He would say like, what are you all going to say? And say this and do this. And I had to say, no, you don't reserve the right to tell us what's going to happen in DEI. And that, in other words, he was trying to protect white staff, and their feelings. And I explained the purpose is, if you're uncomfortable, you have to sit with that uncomfortability, right? You are on white people are on a continuum of racism as much as Black and brown people are on a continuum of oppression, right? Because we who are of the subjugated race, there's a lot of trauma, and you have to pick and choose when and where do I speak up. How do I support? I need support, but then I also must support my colleagues, must support my students. So I have to be like aware, and I have to be strong, But I think more so, like we all are saying, is basically, do we need another diversity, equity, and inclusion like PD in the session? Like, do we need it? And then what's our role, right, in those sessions moving forward?
I think it's absolutely needed, right? And I think that for a long time, DEI work has been focused primarily on race. Which, of course, is at the top of the list of categories of oppression, right? And to harken back to what Dr. Bethel said in the last episode, in that America has had to, the thing that America has thrived on, and as a result, therefore had to sideline its real issues that it's facing. The thing that it had to has been riding on all these years is race. So of course, by default, when you step into a DEI situation, the first thing that you're thinking about is race, right? I have approached it a little differently more recently, and I've approach it from the perspective of developing empathy. Very similar to what Leisha was saying, right? That where she's at right now, because there's predominantly Black and a staff of color, then, you know, it kind of lands differently. We're all pretty much identifying in similar ways. However, we're still different because we are diverse. So how do we have this DEI conversation in a way that everyone can realize that they have a role in this diversity, equity, and inclusion being successful? Especially, and the operative part of DEI is the inclusion piece.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for a person of color to say, well, shit, you know, this ain't for me because I'm Black and I'm oppressed anyway. But then when we really look at the diversity that exists, you might be Black, but you might be Black and heterosexual, while the person sitting next to you is Black and homosexual, right? While the person, you might be people of color, but I'm Black and you are Latino or Latina, right? So it's being able to help people see that there's still diversity and difference that exists among all of us. And we all have unconscious biases. Even as a Black person, I have my unconscious biases even against my own race. So it's, okay, let me dial back the passion. But it's important, though, through the work. So for me, the work is now less about just the race and more about the self-awareness, realizing that you too got issues. You too got unconscious biases that you need to work on. So when you're walking down the street and you see two males holding hands, that your mindset doesn't automatically go to that fixed belief that you have about homosexuality, right? But that you're able to say, you know what, JG, those people face the same kind of oppression that you face by virtue of your race. So you gotta dig deeper and realize that by you having certain kind of biases against them, you are contributing to the inequity in the DEI. You are contributing to the lack of inclusion in the DEI, right? That you're not really fulfilling the diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're sticking to the D in all of that, which is the diversity and recognizing that we're all different, but you're not doing the work to create the equity and to contribute to a more inclusive environment for these people that are different from you.
From all people, right? I think it is, to chime in really quickly, is by all means, when we think about D&I, we're not saying it's white people's fault, right? Right, what's going on in our building, in our like personal life. So I think that, like you said, the more dominant race. So let me bring it home. So when you think about DEI, sometimes white people are like, oh, this is going to be a blame session, right? We're gonna sit through this, and you all are gonna blame us for past, present, future.
For slavery,
right?
honey. Okay.
Right. No, that's not what this time is for, right? But then, like you said, JG, around when we sit through the DEI sessions as well, where the more dominant group is heterosexual,
right?
The person who identifies as homosexual is not saying we are blaming you all. Right. It's your fault that XYZ is happening in different sectors. No, right? So I think it is, like you said, it is the work. And it's almost like religion, if you will, certain religions where people pick and choose. We'll follow this, but we won't follow this, or we'll accept this and we won't accept that. Right. Won't accept that, right? So I think, like you said, it has been thrown in all together. You know, all of the issues have been thrown and not bucketed out together. They've been conflated, and we have not been able to identify call each one by name, right? And like you said, so then we haven't had to do the work and take on the responsibility as individuals. Right. You know?
Yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. I think, so the question is there still a need for DEI conversation sessions or trainings at our school? And I think there always will be, right? Because as we see we're a part of a progressive world, right? So I think the purpose of these conversations is for each party to recognize their privilege. Everybody's coming to the table with a variety of privilege or a host of privilege, and it's just a hierarchy. There's race that could be the largest elephant in the room,
Right.
but then, as you guys said, there's sexuality, religion, there's so many other things, even across the diaspora. Africans coming from Africa, you understand what I'm saying, versus African Americans, Caribbean Americans. There's always going to be a hierarchy, and everybody will recognize, should recognize their privilege. I think that's the overarching purpose. I also want, my thought is gone.
I just want to add a thought here because, you know, JG, you said you were the outlier, but after this conversation, I realized I'm the outlier. And a huge part of why is not so much not recognizing the work, but the delivery and execution of DEIs in the past. And how important that is, because if you're walking in with the mindset that, okay, those who are going to facilitate are doing so with XYZ, what you guys all mentioned, it's very different than having that experience of awakened trauma, because that's what I've experienced. Like, let me put you in a space with other people of your same identity group, and let's bring up all the trauma of the year.
Gotcha.
And then now let's go present it to those who have bestowed that trauma on you. And then now let's go home and go to happy hour.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that, and JG, you brought up Ms. Van Zant, and I'm so sorry if I say her name wrong. I love her. But I think a lot of what she does ties into this. You cannot open a wound and then send that wound into the cold.
Right.
Right? And I feel like that has been my experience. So I think this particular episode speaks volumes to individuals who want to execute these sessions in the future, or who has done so, to say, well, this is what has happened and this is how you need to go about it. Because I definitely agree, being able to walk in there and say, well, these are my own hidden biases is a very different outcome than saying, okay, let me go and revisit the traumas now of the year, you know?
Yeah. I think the people who have, like you say in the past, who have led the DEI sessions have been ill-equipped, right? And then also, it cannot be.
Right. Oh yes.
They haven't been vulnerable themselves.
Yes.
So
Because
you're asking for something that you're not leading or showing, right? Being a role model for. Vulnerability is like the overarching DEIA, anything. That's the you have to be prepared to be vulnerable, but there has to be trust established. It's so many levels that just haven't been like prerequisites, right? Before you're even getting to a space where you are asking people who work together, right? These are not your friends or people that you know intimately. These are people that you work with. We get that. Being an educator is passionate and it's different from other work industries, right? There's a lot of passion and feelings into it, but I mean, vulnerability, that's if that's not present in the person that's facilitating.
Not to cut you off, because in the past it has been intellectualized sometimes as well, right?
Yes.
But oh my God,
we've gotten reading
right. But we would say too,
you want me to read little about me?
But
that's supposed to be part of the conversation.
Right. Let me hear your experience. So I think that, like you just stated, we have some literature that we've even read, for this week. But also, the literature should not drive or take away the experiences of the people in the room.
Right.
Because it has been, we have said in the DEI sessions where we receive all of these packets to read, And then people have told us like, oh, this is your experience with like being oppressed, or this is your experience with racism. And it's like, well, actually not.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
Excuse
Like,
you, I'm
and
not
the thing
reading
is,
this,
like,
and
even
that's
if
why I didn't read
I
them.
read it because that's who I am. But I'm like, all right, this is a reading, right? And which is fine. It's the literature. But let me tell you about my own experiences, right? So something that you all stated that from Malcolm X, and he mentioned it in an interview. So he said the problem is that the Black problem in America is beyond America's ability to solve, right? He said it needs to be handled by the United Nations, because this is not a violation of civil rights,
but of human rights.
This is a right. So, in my thought, I said that the people who are responsible for creating the problem, they are incapable of also solving the problem.
Right.
Exactly.
So you can't solve a problem that you created.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sailor.
Which is the problem with white teachers teaching Black kids history. I'm confused.
But yeah, sorry. I know you see me.
Go ahead, Dula.
But also, Dr. Bethel, what you said is so important. You said those who created the problem can't fix it. But even more than that, when fixing the problem is a hindrance on your own livelihood.
Yeah, your power and your privilege.
Right?
Your power and your privilege.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why you don't want to absolve your privilege?
Why would I be so eager to put an end to a system that has allowed me to pivot in this society, and my forefathers to pivot in this society? I'm sorry, I'm getting passionate here.
No,
and my grandchildren to pivot in this society. Why would I straightforwardly want to interrupt that? Right?
Yeah, which is why the trust was always like, why are you here?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Why? I'm not buying it that you're just so passionate about undoing everything that your ancestors have done.
Are you willing to give up the privileges of your son? Is the question. Are you willing to give up the privileges of your son so that my sons can survive?
Right.
Thank you. And what we've seen is white leaders and white educators in this space actually carry their power as armor. So it just doesn't make sense. Like that's what we're talking about, right? Like the trust hasn't been established. If this is the way, you're proud to be named whatever for whatever, right? In this space where you should be giving that power and privilege and allowing a person that looks like the children that you're teaching to have that platform, right? But instead you want to stand upon that platform and take all the credit for it. It doesn't
regulate
sit well
it.
with me. And regulate it.
I mean, damn, Sela, you just said a mouthful when you said Sula, Sula, where you said, why would I have benefited from, but that's the work of DEI, right? I have benefited from this system for so long. Why would I then work to undo it, right? Which brings us to, the last question, something posed by, Baldwin in his essay, A Text to Teachers, right? Baldwin talks about the responsibility of the Black educator. And this is many, many years ago, which is still relevant
1963
to today. Yeah, which is relevant to and we're talking about the same issues, right? So, what is our responsibilities as Black educators is to, and we mentioned this in the first episode, is to, we have to be willing to risk, and risk it all, right? We
go for broke,
we got to be willing to go for broke. And like JG so passionately and invigorating and with conviction stated, you have to be willing to be ostracized. You have to be willing to be almost outcasted, if you will, if you stand up for your rights. and that plays into where you have to be willing to bring your white or whoever colleagues into a room and say, hey, when you did XYZ, that was a microaggression, but this is what you did, and here's the impact it had on me. So you have to have that courage to speak up, whole group and have those private conversations to hold people accountable. So I pose the question to you, is like, who should be held accountable? Who's responsible? What's our role?
I mean,
that's deep.
I continue to see my role as there to help you do the work. And I think that one of the things that is a common thread in all of our experiences with DEI is that it has either gone really well or really badly based on how it was approached and facilitated. And so for me, being in a position where I have to lead this work at the school that I'm at, which, by the way, the staff is predominantly a staff of color between Black and Latinx people, and our Caucasian cousins are in the minority, right? And so which puts a very interesting spin on the work that I have to do, because I'm not only helping them to understand race versus ethnicity, but I'm also helping them to understand language, the biases around language, around color, around heterosexual versus homosexual. So it's like our DEI work runs the gamut. And so I see my role as, again, and sorry if this sounds repetitious, but as I am here to literally provide you with the tools and the terms and the understanding and all of the principles and the values within this work, so that you then can intake that, internalize that, and look at your own self in all of these areas: race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender. So that because we have toxic masculinity in our staff also. So for my male staff members, I want to provide you with the tools that you can apply to dig into your own self-awareness and biases around gender, in the same way that you do around race, when you are in the disadvantaged category. And so the one thing that I really drive home to them is, at the end of the day, we all have a role to play in this whole DEI work, and we all have one foot in the realm of things that we're doing that's wrong and needs to be changed, and we have a one foot in the things that we're doing really well and we need to continue to doing, right? But it all comes down to challenging your thinking, challenging the status quo, challenging your fixed mindset around things, challenging and shifting your own habits, so that you get closer and closer to this ideal that is DEI. And it's going to take everyone a different amount of time to get there, but the work cannot stop. You gotta continue doing the work. And to the last thing I'm going to say is that at the heart of the work is what Leisha just raised, the empathy. Being able to develop empathy and to flex that muscle as much as possible in every situation that you're in. You're always seeking to understand how what you're saying and what you're doing is going to impact, whether it be negative or positive, your audience, the person that's across the table from you, especially if it is that they're different from who you are.
Yeah, I agree. I think that our role, yes, we all have a role, as I said prior, right? As we are oftentimes a part of the subjugated group when it comes to race, like Jamal said, if we're in a setting similar to like where I am and where Jamal is, where the majority is the POC or people of color environment, race now becomes not the most prioritized thing to talk about when we're talking about differences and biases. Like we said, there's a hierarchy, right? Like, I think the newest one for me, or for where I am, is pronouns. That's a learning that, you know, we're in a progressive environment, and now there's a new thing, and we have to actively be able or seek to understand and empathize with the person sitting next to us. I was going to say, and then I caught myself, because I am a reader and a researcher, but then I can't call out white folks for basing their knowledge on people of color's experience through literature. If I'm then going to say, oh, I read James Baldwin and I read Audre Lorde, and I know about the plight of being homosexual and being gay and being lesbian in America, like having the double, what do you call it? The double, like...
No, not a double standard. It's like...
Not a double...
The intersectionality,
it's like you're being oppressed twice, right? Like
your
intersectionality, yes, of oppression, right? I can't use that as a basis. Sure, right? You can read to gather more people's experience, maybe at a different time frame in America, but the work truly and really is in having conversations where the biases are removed. And I'm literally listening to gain understanding of what your experience is when you're in a situation where the majority of your team is heterosexual. Now you are not, you know what I'm saying? There's another layer of oppression there. And I think that's part of the work, right? Like educating yourself and just recognizing your privilege, even in those small instances that are not always the prioritized privileges.
I want to piggyback there. I think one of the most important things I heard just now from TEAchers is the conversation. I think that shift has to happen, and when it does happen, I think the role is to listen and to be a listener. So I think what you said before, Dr. Bethel, is, you know, let's continue to have the literature. Literature is very important, and TEAchers, you just back that up. But more importantly, let's learn from the lived experiences of each other as listeners. So when we do enter DEI, we're not looking for the agenda and the script, but we're looking for the human conversation to drive us in this work.
The human conversation.
Yeah. I think it's important. The literature educates us. It gives us the language. Right?
The language.
You know, it gives us the language, right? But then, like you all stated, it's the experiences, right? So I think that if you think about it, it's a basic human right to not expect everybody to live the same life, right? Because that's closed minded. That's closed minded. That's a fixed mindset. Things work like this because this is how my life is, or you should do it this way because this is how it works. And we have to understand as a people that life in 2021 looks so different. Looks so different than 2018 and even 2019. You know, so the world has evolved.
Absolutely.
You know,
the level of progression.
So much. So I think that, you know, in conclusion, you know, I think our role is to make people aware, and I would definitely see, like you said, like calling people out, right? When, like you said, JG, in your workspace with the tools, right? You have been given the tools, you've been given the language, you've been given the literature. It is your responsibility as an individual, right? Here are the parameters in this organization. We don't disrespect each other. You know, we don't do this. This is a safe space, regardless of your background, regardless of your sexual preference, your religion, your whatever. This is a safe space, and this is how we operate, right? And we operate within those parameters in this workspace. So just in a final thought, like a quick whip around, and then we'll segue into the homework. Any lasting thoughts? Let's start with you, TEAchers.
Lasting thoughts, empathize, especially now. There's so much going on in the world. Release judgment. Just empathize. You don't know anyone's story better than them. They know their own story. Don't write the narrative for them. That's a lot what we teach kids in literature, is that we want to read from authors of color because for so long, white people have written our narratives for us. So similarly, you know, extend that into your everyday livelihood and your environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. My final thoughts is what I said before, like engage in the conversation. And, you know, I've learned so much. It's crazy. This hour talking to you guys, I've learned so much more than I probably have learned ever in a D&I session. And that speaks volumes. And so again, engage in the conversation outside of DEI, like just on a regular basis, so you can identify what your biases are and how you can engage in this work.
For me, it's do the work. That's my thing. Do the work. Raise your self-awareness. Push and grow your mindsets. Shift your habits. Those 3 things, and I'm gonna say them one more time. Do the work. Raise your self-awareness. Push and grow your mindset around everything, and shift your habits accordingly.
My final thought segue into our homework for this week is do a self-reflection this week, right? Because if you think about it, even though, like you said, we're Black educators, we still operate in some area of privilege, right? So even if we work in a space where the Black teachers are the majority, there is even privilege in that, right? So like reflect on, you know, get an accountability buddy, and just reflect, you know, this week with your teacher friends, you know, influence people to join and listen to the podcast. Hello. Where money resides. Where the money resides. You know, just do a deep reflection of yourself and like, how am I showing up in my workspace? You know, and
Okay. All right. So usually, in real life, after we've had a day-long DEI session, because you know them shits used to be a whole day,
and draining.
Yes, they did.
We have to go get a drink or go do something to kind of decompress from this all. But given that we're on a podcast right now, you know, and we're all social distancing and all of that great stuff, Sula, what can we and our audiences do to just fill a cup in the next coming week?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add on to that, right? Like, the work is a lot of work, and a huge component is the giving. We are giving people naturally as teachers.
Right.
So what are you taking in? What are you receiving for yourself? So let's do a whip around. What are you all doing to make sure that you are receiving as much as you are giving? Dr. Bell, sorry. Payback.
Dr. Bell in the house.
Just kidding. Go ahead, Dr. Bell. How are you giving to yourself this week?
And I need to pray, right? I need to get back grounded. I just need to ground myself.
Absolutely. And Leisha, how are you giving to yourself?
So coming out of my silent, or I should say continuing my purposeful silence, I am nesting. That means I'm restoring and cleansing my space. I think that lends itself well to internal reflection, but also your space needs to be a reflection of how you're feeling in the space that you're in.
JG, what you doing?
For me, I want to listen more this week, you know. I want to listen more so that I can understand the alternative perspectives on things, right? Because for me, I believe that a lot of conflict comes out of misunderstanding. So for me, I know that in order to learn I also have to listen and listen attentively, so that I can just understand whether or not I agree, understand just like different perspectives, and in so doing, learn people more so that the work that needs to be done can be done, in an informed kind of way, knowing that I understand different people more.
Yeah, and I'll just close out there with saying, make sure that you are consciously thinking about your emotional and mental well-being and self, and how you are, how you're taking care of those components of who you are.
Right.
All right. So again, make sure that this week you are filling your cup as you're filling the cups of those around you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
How are you filling your cup, Stella?
I said by being aware of your emotional well-being. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, folks. Well, this brings us to the end of yet another Teachers Workroom podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Teachers Workroom podcast. And our podcast is now available on, drum rolls please, Apple Podcasts. Make sure that you subscribe to us on Apple Podcast at the Teachers Workroom podcast. We are also on YouTube. Again, at the Teachers Workroom podcast. I know you can't forget that name. And the podcast is also available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. So until the next time.
Bye, team.
Bye.
Peace, love, and light.
Bye. See you next week.
Ciao. Bye, guys.